Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive on Greece. We got a really cool set of sources on this one, and I'm excited to dig in and see what we can find.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is how much of Greece's past you need to understand to really make sense of modern Greece.
So we're talking like way back, right? Like beyond those classic temples and stuff.
Way back. We got to start with the Cycladic, Minoan, and Mycenaean civilizations. Each one's got its own story, and they all left their mark on the ancient world.
Okay, those names have always sounded kind of mysterious to me. What were they like?
So picture this. It's around 3200 BC, the Aegean Sea. You've got this culture flourishing on the islands, the Cycladic culture. And get this, they're known for these minimalist marble figurines, arms folded, super simple but really powerful presence.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've seen those in museums. They kind of draw you in, you know?
Right, makes you think about their beliefs and rituals. And then, fast forward a bit, you've got the Minoans. Palaces, huge complexes, labyrinths, you name it.
Knossos, right?
Exactly. Knossos, think 3100 BC. It wasn't just a palace, it was the whole shebang, power, trade, religious ceremonies. And their art, super vibrant, full of color. They even had their own writing system, Linear A. Still haven't deciphered it, though.
That's wild. And they were doing this so long ago, makes you realize how much we still don't know. So then we have the Mycenaeans. They always strike me as the warriors.
You're not far off. Around 1750 BC, here come the Mycenaeans. Definitely more focused on warfare compared to the Minoans. Massive fortresses like the Lion Gate at Mycene, and still standing today. You can practically feel the power radiating off it.
I bet. Didn't they also develop their own writing?
They did. Linear B. And here's the cool part. It's the earliest Greek writing we found. So even though the Mycenaeans were gone by around 1100 BC, their language paved the way for, well, Greek as we know it. The language of Homer, Socrates, Plato.
So that's the link, right?
Yeah.
Between these early cultures and what we think of as ancient Greece.
Exactly. And as we move into that period, you start seeing those iconic city-states pop up. Athens, Sparta, each with its own distinct character, its own way of doing things.
Like Athens being the birthplace of democracy. Still pretty relevant to us today, I'd say.
Absolutely. Think about it. Around 776 BC, the first Olympic Games marks the end of what some call the Greek Dark Ages. And from there, bam! Explosion of intellectual and cultural development. Athens creates a direct democracy, a super radical idea at the time. And right alongside that, you have philosophy emerging. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. These guys are still shaping how we think today.
It's kind of crazy to think about their influence lasting this long. Like, what were some of the ideas they were wrestling with that still matter to us?
Well, Socrates, for example, he was all about challenging the status quo. Question everything, push people to really think about what they believe, find truth through dialogue. Then you've got Plato, exploring justice, the ideal society, the nature of reality itself. And Aristotle, he's diving into logic, ethics, the natural world, trying to understand the fundamental laws governing everything.
So they were more than just philosophers then. They were scientists, social critics, the whole package.
Exactly. Their impact goes way beyond just philosophy. They shaped Western thought in politics, art, science, ethics, you name it.
Wow. Okay, so it wasn't all just deep thinking and debates, though, right?
Yeah.
Ancient Greece had its fair share of, well, conflict, too, didn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, conflict was a big part of the picture. The city-states were often fighting amongst themselves. You had the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, for example. And then there were threats from outside, like the Persian Empire.
Oh, right, the Persian Wars, like those classic David versus Goliath stories.
Exactly. Think about the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. The Athenian army was outnumbered, but they managed to pull off a win against the Persians. It's a testament to their strategic thinking and sheer guts. And then you've got Alexander the Great conquering vast territories and spreading Greek culture like wildfire.
Alexander the Great, now that's a name everyone knows. His empire stretched all the way to India, didn't it? What happened to it after he died? Did it just collapse?
It did eventually break apart, leading to what we call the Hellenistic period. It's this fascinating mix of Greek culture blending with Eastern influences. You get this unique fusion of ideas and art styles. Think of cities like Alexandria in Egypt. It became a major hub for knowledge and scholarship during that time.
So even when classical Greece declined, its influence kept spreading and changing.
Absolutely. Greek culture, ideas, the language, they became ingrained in so much of the Mediterranean world.
But then, like you mentioned before, this new power enters the scene. Rome. So what happened to Greece under Roman rule?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's the classic unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. Rome might have conquered Greece militarily, but they were absolutely fascinated by Greek culture.
So Greece kind of conquered its conquerors through its culture.
You could say that Greece became a Roman province, but Roman society was already head over heels for Greek art, philosophy, literature. Roman elites were studying Greek, seeing it as this model of sophistication and refinement.
That's a really cool perspective. It shows how powerful culture and ideas can be, even when you lose a war. But eventually, of course, Rome falls. So what happens to Greece then?
That, my friend, is where we'll pick up next time. As the Roman Empire fractures, Greece finds itself in a new empire, the Byzantine Empire. Make sure to join us as we explore this next chapter in Greece's incredible journey.
All right, so we're back and ready to dive deeper into Greece. Last time we left off with ancient Greece becoming part of the Roman Empire.
And now we're moving into the medieval period. This is when Greece becomes a key player in the Byzantine Empire.
You know, the Byzantine Empire is one of those things that always felt kind of murky to me. Was it basically just like Rome 2.0? Or was it its own thing?
It's a good question, and lots of people think it was just Rome carrying on. But while they did see themselves as part of that Roman legacy, the Byzantines definitely had their own vibe. Their capital wasn't Rome, it was Constantinople.
Oh, right. Modern-day Istanbul. Right on the edge of Europe and Asia.
Exactly. Super strategic location. And while Greece wasn't right at the center geographically,
It still played a major role.
huge role, especially when it comes to culture and language, the Byzantine Empire, mostly Greek-speaking. And their culture was soaked in Greek traditions, especially through the lens of Orthodox Christianity.
So the Greek Orthodox Church was a big deal back then.
Oh, absolutely. The church,
Yeah.
cornerstone of Byzantine society. It was vital in keeping Greek language and culture alive. Lots of historians think the church was instrumental in spreading Greek ideas and traditions throughout the Orthodox world.
So even as part of a bigger empire, Greece held on to its unique identity.
Exactly. Think of the Byzantine Empire as this super diverse mix of cultures and influences. And Greece, with its rich history, was a vital thread in that tapestry.
But I imagine this period wasn't all smooth sailing. Didn't the Byzantine Empire have to deal with all sorts of invasions and migrations, especially in the Balkan regions where Greece is located?
Oh, you're right about that. They had their fair share of challenges. Just like Rome before them, they were dealing with external pressures. You had invasions by Goths, Huns, and then later Slavic tribes, all pushing into their territories, including Greece.
So how did Greece weather those waves of migration? Was it a period of massive social upheaval and collapse?
Well, the idea that it all just fell apart isn't really accurate. Some areas of Greece did see changes in population and demographics, but many cities, especially the ones with strong defenses, they kept on thriving. Actually, a lot of Greek cities saw real prosperity from the 4th to the 7th centuries.
Huh. That's interesting. It challenges that classic narrative of decline.
Yeah.
Greek society was more adaptable than we might think.
Exactly. They had this knack for adjusting and evolving. They fought back against invaders, regained territory, and even experienced periods of economic and cultural growth.
So if they were so resilient, what caused the decline of the Byzantine Empire? Was it just that constant pressure from outside forces?
Those outside pressures definitely played a part. But the final blow came from a new power emerging in the east, the Ottoman Turks. Starting in the 14th century, the Ottomans started expanding, taking bigger and bigger bites out of the Byzantine Empire.
So that's when we see a good chunk of Greece falling under Ottoman rule.
Yep. Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, fell to the Ottomans in 1453. By 1460, most of mainland Greece was under their control. This marked a whole new chapter in Greek history, one that would last for centuries.
I bet Ottoman rule had a huge impact on Greece. Was it like total cultural suppression, or did some elements of Greek culture manage to survive?
It's complicated, you know. The Ottomans were Muslim, but they generally tolerated other religions within their empire. They didn't force people to convert to Islam, but there was definitely some discrimination against Christians.
So there was pressure to convert, even if it wasn't outright forced.
You could say that. Converting to Islam could open doors for you, like in terms of social status or economic opportunities. But a lot of Greeks held on to their Orthodox faith, and the church remained super important for preserving their identity during this time.
It's amazing how they managed to hold on to their culture and beliefs under foreign rule.
It speaks to how resilient the Greek people are. But it wasn't a walk in the park either. There were heavy taxes, and many rural Greeks were basically serfs tied to the land. There were uprisings and revolts, but they were usually met with brutal crackdowns.
So while some communities found ways to adapt, it sounds like a pretty tough time for a lot of Greeks.
Yeah, it was a time of real hardship and uncertainty. But even under Ottoman rule, Greek culture didn't just vanish. Folk music, dancing, language, these essential parts of their identity kept going strong, often in defiance of those in power.
That's really powerful, this deep-seated sense of identity, this refusal to be assimilated.
Right. And then the 18th century rolls around and you have the Enlightenment spreading all these new ideas. This really impacted Greek intellectuals and merchants. They started to imagine a future free from Ottoman rule.
So the seeds of revolution were being planted.
Exactly. You start seeing secret societies like the Filikiateria popping up. They were all about drumming up support for independence. And then in 1821, bam, the Greek War of Independence breaks out. This is a pivotal moment.
Talk about a risky move. What were the key things that led to the revolution's success?
A few things came together. First, there was this strong sense of national identity among Greeks. Language, culture, religion, these were powerful bonds. Second, the Ottoman Empire was going through its own troubles at the time. Years of warfare had weakened them.
So it was a combo of Greek strength and Ottoman weakness that created the opportunity.
Right. And we can't forget about international support. A lot of people in Western Europe, inspired by the Greeks' fight for freedom and the legacy of ancient Greece, they provided support, both moral and material.
So it wasn't just a Greek fight. It was seen as part of a broader European movement for liberty.
You got it. The Greek War of Independence resonated with a lot of people in Europe who saw it as a fight against tyranny.
And in the end, the revolutionaries won.
They did. After years of brutal fighting, Greece finally got its independence in 1832. This was the birth of modern Greece, a nation reborn after centuries under foreign rule.
What an achievement. I bet that was a time of pure joy for the Greek people. But independence is just the first step, right? Building a new nation comes with a whole new set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely. You've got to establish a government, figure out your borders, integrate different populations. It's a tall order. And that, my friend, is where we'll pick things up next time. Be sure to join us as we explore how modern Greece navigated those challenges and carved its path into the 20th century.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Greece deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground. Ancient civilizations, Byzantine Empire, the fight for independence from the Ottomans.
And now we're in the 19th century. Greece is a brand new nation, trying to find its footing in a world that's changing fast.
I bet it wasn't easy. Building a whole country from scratch, creating a government, finding their place in Europe. Where do you even begin?
Well, the great powers, that's Britain, France, and Russia, they had a big hand in shaping those early years. They decided to put a Bavarian prince, Otto von Wittelsbach, on the throne.
A Bavarian king. Huh. How'd that go over with the Greeks?
It was a bit rocky, to be honest. There were clashes between Otto's Bavarian advisors and the Greek people. A lot of Greeks wanted more say in how their country was run, more autonomy.
So there was this tension between the monarchy and this push for democracy.
Yeah. And in 1843, there was this uprising, forced King Otto to give them a constitution, create a representative assembly. It was a big win for democracy, but political infighting and power struggles kept causing problems for decades.
Sounds like a pretty chaotic time. Were there any bright spots in those early years as a nation?
Oh yeah, definitely. Even with all the political drama going on, there was this renewed interest in their classical Greek heritage. Art, literature, music, they all started flourishing. It was like a cultural rebirth happening right alongside the birth of the nation.
So the spirit of ancient Greece was being revived right alongside the modern nation? That's cool.
Yeah, and this wave of national pride fueled a desire to free other Greek-speaking areas that were still under Ottoman control. The Megali idea, this dream of a greater Greece that included all the historically Greek lands, it became a powerful force.
Yeah, the Megali idea. I've heard of that. What did it really mean? How did it play out?
It was basically this vision of uniting all Greeks under one banner, taking back land that they considered historically Greek. It drove a lot of their foreign policy in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
So they were focused on internal development and these big ambitions at the same time.
Exactly. Greece actually expanded its territory during the Balkan Wars in the early 20th century. They gained places like Crete, Epirus, and Macedonia. It seemed like the Megali idea might become reality.
But I'm guessing those territorial ambitions might have backfired.
Yeah. After World War I, Greece tried to push even further into Asia Minor, trying to reclaim areas with large Greek populations. But it didn't go well. They were defeated in the Greco-Turkish War of 1919-1922.
That must have been a crushing defeat. What were the consequences?
It was a major turning point. Greece had to give up territory, and there was this huge population exchange between Greece and Turkey. Millions of people were displaced.
It's a tragic reminder of how much war costs in human terms.
Yeah.
How did Greece deal with that flood of refugees?
It was a massive challenge. Over 1.5 million refugees poured into Greece, many with nothing left. Integrating them put a huge strain on the country. Resources were stretched thin. It caused a lot of social and political turmoil.
So even as they were celebrating independence and trying to expand, they were also dealing with this war that completely changed their population and identity. So what happened next?
Well, the political scene remained volatile. They abolished the monarchy in 1924 and formed the Second Hellenic Republic, but they just couldn't shake the political divisions and economic problems.
Sounds like it was one thing after another. Did things ever calm down?
Not really. There was a royalist coup in 1935, and the monarchy was back. Then, in 1936, General Ioannis Metaxas took over as dictator. So things took a turn toward authoritarian rule.
Wow, so just as democracy was getting started, Greece shifts toward authoritarianism. What was the impact of that?
Metaxas' regime did stabilize things a bit, and the economy saw some progress. But it came at a cost. They cracked down on anyone who opposed them, civil liberties were restricted, and then of course came World War II. That was a real test for Greece.
World War II must have been terrifying. How did they handle it?
Well, they actually resisted when Italy invaded in 1940. They even won some battles early on. But they were eventually occupied by the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Bulgaria.
I can only imagine what that was like. What was it like for Greeks living under occupation?
It was brutal. The economy was in shambles, food was scarce, and the occupying forces committed terrible atrocities. But even through all that, the Greek people showed incredible resilience. Resistance movements sprang up and fought back hard.
So even then, facing such overwhelming odds, that fighting spirit remained.
It did. The Greek resistance was one of the most effective in all of Europe. They caused a lot of problems for the Axis powers.
It's incredible to hear about their courage during such a dark chapter. So, what happened after the war? Did Greece finally get some peace and a chance to rebuild?
Sadly, no. The end of World War II didn't bring peace to Greece. They were deeply divided, and a civil war broke out between communist and anti-communist forces.
Another war. It's amazing how much turmoil Greece has endured throughout its history.
Yeah, it really is. The Greek Civil War dragged on until 1949. It left the country politically divided and the economy in ruins. But with help from the Marshall Plan, they started to rebuild.
So the post-war period was all about reconstruction, hopefully some healing, but also dealing with the scars of conflict.
Exactly. Greece joined NATO in 1952, siding with the West during the Cold War. And even with the ongoing political instability, their economy started to grow in the following decades. They even joined the European Economic Community, what became the European Union, in 1981.
So the 20th century was a real roller coaster for Greece. Wars, political upheaval, economic struggles.
Yeah.
But it also showed how strong and resilient the Greek people are. Their determination to rebuild and be a part of Europe.
It's a story of survival and adaptation. And even though modern Greece has faced new challenges like the economic crisis not too long ago, they've continued to show they can overcome tough times.
Wow, what a journey this has been. From ancient Greece to the struggles for independence and the complexities of modern times, it really makes you appreciate the long and fascinating history of Greece.
And you know, what's striking is how much impact this relatively small country has had on the world. Democracy, philosophy, science, arts, Greece's fingerprints are all over Western civilization.
It really makes you wonder what role they'll play in the future of Europe and the Mediterranean, given everything they've been through. That's definitely something to think about. Well, that wraps up our deep dive on Greece. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring.